What makes this case particularly disturbing are the details hiding in plain sight. Cookie Diaz didn't arrive to that confrontation empty-handed. She stepped out of that vehicle with what investigators believe was the murder weapon already in her grip, before a single word was exchanged, before anything escalated, before there was even a confrontation to speak of, not retrieved mid-confrontation, not grabbed in self-defense, but carried there. She came prepared. Then, within hours of Caroline taking her last breath, the sisters were in the shower, changing clothes, running a washing machine over the evidence of what they had just done. And when police finally came to collect them, one of them looked directly into the camera, smiled, and raised a peace sign. 3 details. Each one, on its own, raises a question. A question that this case will eventually have to answer in a courtroom. Was this a premeditated act carried out sloppily? Or did an argument spiral into something nobody planned, and the cover-up was the real mistake? Because the weapon didn't get into Cookie's hand by accident, and that washing machine didn't turn itself on. It was a Thursday afternoon, broad daylight, a sonic drive-in on a quiet street in Del Rio, Texas. By 2:10 p.m., a 32-year-old mother of 5 had been stabbed multiple times. By 9 p.m., she was gone. What happened in between is still, in large part, a mystery. But what happened next, captured on camera, in full view of police officers and onlookers, is the part of this case that many people can't forget. As she was escorted away, one of the accused flashed what appeared to be a peace sign and wore a noticeable smirk, an image that quickly spread across social media and sparked outrage. A peace sign thrown up at the lens, a smirk that looked almost proud, as if the act of taking a life meant nothing at all. This is the case of Caroline Peña, a young mother of 5 children whose life was cut short by 2 sisters, Amaya Cookie Diaz, age 19, Kitty Mia Diaz, age 21, and their best friend, Keandra Renee Faz, age 21. What seemed like a normal lunch outing soon turned into a bloody afternoon that led to 1 death and 3 arrests.
Warning: the story you are about to witness is based on true events. It contains graphic accounts of crime, violence, and tragedy. Every story told here involves real people, real families, and real loss. We do not take that lightly. This content is presented strictly for educational and documentary purposes, with full respect for the victims and all those affected. Viewer discretion is strongly advised.
Before going into details of what happened that unfortunate afternoon, let's take a moment to know who the victim was. Because she was more than just a headline or trending topic. She was a human being, with people who loved and cherished her. Caroline Peña was 32 years old, a mother of 5, and the oldest of her children was just 17. She also had a twin sister and spent her life in Del Rio, Texas, where she was known as a devoted mother and a loyal friend. She became a mother at a young age and met her close friend Zelina Ochoa through a program for teenage mothers. The two supported each other through some of life's toughest years, sharing babysitting duties, encouragement, and whatever they could to help one another get by. That generosity never changed. Friends say Caro was the kind of person who would give you her last dollar if you needed it. Her best friend, Christina Salinas, described them as inseparable. And just 1 day before her death, they were together cooking dinner with Caro's daughter, unaware of the tragedy that was only hours away. Speaking through tears, Zelina later said, "She was born to be a mom. She really loved being a mom." Those who knew Caroline remember her not for the headlines, but for her kindness, her selflessness, and the love she poured into her children. On the afternoon of June 25, 2026, officers with the Del Rio Police Department were dispatched to Valverde Regional Medical Center after a woman arrived with multiple stab wounds. That woman was Caroline Peña. Investigators quickly traced the source of the attack to the 800 block of East 10th Street, a residential area near a Sonic drive-in at one of Del Rio's busiest intersections. Surveillance footage obtained by investigators tells the clearest story of what happened in the minutes before that hospital call. The footage shows Caroline's black Dodge pickup truck pulling up to the residence of Keandra Faz at approximately 2 p.m. She was there alone. Shortly after, a black Chrysler 300 arrives separately. The Diaz sisters step out. Cookie Diaz, the younger of the two at 19, is seen exiting the passenger seat and moving toward Caroline. In her right hand, investigators say, was an object they believed was the murder weapon. What happened next was swift and violent. Witnesses in the neighborhood described the confrontation as going from 0 to 100 almost instantly, with several bystanders saying there was no verbal exchange before the physical assault began. It happened so quickly, one witness said. Everybody was like, wait, what did we just witness? According to the probable cause affidavit, Cookie Diaz struck Caroline in the back. Blood was immediately visible on the back of her shirt. Kitty Diaz then joined in, physically assaulting her. Faz also joined the attack. All three women were on her at once. Caroline went down. And then, according to her friend Zelina Ochoa, she stood back up. She had just collapsed and she stood right back up, Ochoa said. She was a fighter. The attack was eventually broken up. The suspects left the scene. Caroline, stabbed twice in the back and once in the abdomen, was transported to Val Verde Regional Medical Center. Her injuries were too severe for local treatment. She was airlifted to a trauma center in San Antonio, where she died at approximately 9 p.m. that evening. Caroline's injuries were severe enough that she was airlifted to a trauma center in San Antonio for emergency treatment. According to Fox News reporting on the wound pattern, she had been stabbed twice in the back and once in the abdomen. Her best friend, Christina Salinas, has since revealed a detail that stayed with her. Caroline tried to call her just minutes before the attack. Christina missed the call. She didn't know it at the time, but it would be one of the last attempts Caroline made to reach someone before everything changed. I feel like if I would have answered that call, honestly, I would have been there with her, Christina said. It wouldn't have gotten like that. There's no way to know if that's true, but it's the kind of thought that doesn't leave you, and Christina has had to live with it since. What we do know is that Christina rushed to the hospital and was able to say goodbye before Caroline was flown to San Antonio. She remembers her friend's strength even in that moment. That girl, she was a fighter, Christina said. She was still standing her ground. At approximately 9 p.m. that evening, investigators were notified that Caroline had died at the hospital in San Antonio. While Caroline was being treated, detectives were already working the case backward. They reviewed local surveillance footage, the same footage that would later reveal the full sequence of events outside Faz's home. They processed physical evidence from the scene. They interviewed witnesses. According to friends, images from the confrontation briefly circulated on a community social media page before being taken down. Through the surveillance footage and witness interviews, investigators identified three suspects: 21-year-old Kitty Mia Diaz, her 19-year-old sister Amaya Cookie Diaz, and their 21-year-old friend Keandra Renee Faz. Here is where this story requires careful handling, because a claim has emerged that is already shaping how some people are talking about this case online, and it deserves to be examined properly, rather than repeated without context. Keandra Faz, one of the three women now charged with Caroline's murder, told investigators that Caroline had arrived at her residence that afternoon looking to start a fight. That is Faz's account. One person's version of events, offered to police by someone who is herself facing a murder charge, and who therefore has every reason to frame the situation in a way that shifts responsibility away from herself and onto the victim. Now, as at the time of this documentary, no official motive has been released. But if we line up what we actually know, we may be closer to understanding why Caroline Peña lost her life that afternoon than investigators have publicly acknowledged. Caroline drove to the residence of Keandra Faz, also known as Keandra Renee Faz. She arrived alone, no weapon. Witnesses described the atmosphere as completely calm, sitting at 0. Whatever her reason for being there, she wasn't there to hurt anyone. The evidence makes that clear. Then the Diaz sisters arrived, separately, in a different vehicle. And Cookie, 19-year-old Amaya Diaz, stepped out of that Chrysler with what investigators believe was a knife already in her right hand. Before a single word of confrontation had been exchanged, before anything had escalated, before there was even an argument to speak of, she came ready, which raises a question nobody has officially answered. Did Keandra Faz make a call? Did she send a text? Because the timing of that arrival, weapon already in hand, suggests the sisters didn't just happen to show up. And if Faz reached out to them before anything turned physical, this stops looking like a spontaneous confrontation and starts looking like something far more deliberate. The moment the sisters arrived, multiple witnesses confirmed it went from 0 to 100 instantly, proving Caroline kept a calm demeanor during her time there with Keandra. After the sisters arrived, they immediately unleashed chaos. Cookie struck Caroline in the back. Blood was immediately visible on her shirt. Kitty joined in. Then Faz. All three on her at once. That witness testimony matters because it directly dismantles any narrative that Caroline provoked what happened. She was calm. They arrived ready. What followed was brutal. Caroline was stabbed in the side of her stomach and twice in the back, wounds that punctured her lungs and ultimately took her life. And what did the sisters do next? They went home, showered, changed clothes, and put what they had been wearing straight into a washing machine. Not hours later. Immediately. A calculated, deliberate move to destroy the evidence of what they had just done. Then came the arrest footage. Cookie Diaz grinning, like what had just happened was entertainment. Like a woman wasn't fighting for her life in a San Antonio hospital at that very moment. The Del Rio police chief himself said publicly, "My impression is it didn't look good, and you would think there would be a little more remorse in a situation like that." It seemed reality hadn't caught up with her yet, as Caroline was still alive but hospitalized at the time of the arrest by 4 p.m. However, reality caught up with them soon enough. The mugshots released by Del Rio police tell a completely different story. The laughter gone, the smirk gone, replaced by hollow, grim expressions that suggested the weight of what they had done had finally landed. Cookie, the one who showed up with the weapon, the one who struck first. Cookie is Kitty's younger sister, which means Kitty watched her 19-year-old sister walk toward another woman with a knife in her hand and did nothing to stop it. She joined in instead. And Kitty is a mother to a young child named Gigi, a child she posts about constantly, a child she describes as her entire world and the light of her life. Did Cookie not stop for a single moment to think about what her actions that afternoon could cost her nephew? That the little boy her sister calls her whole world could grow up watching his mother serve a life sentence. And Caroline had children just as young. Did that cross anyone's mind? That stabbing this woman could mean her children would spend the rest of their lives without her. Which brings us to the question this entire community keeps circling back to. What was this really about? Was there a history between these women? A dispute involving their children? Something that happened closer to home? Or was this about someone else entirely? Perhaps someone they all knew? Perhaps a man? This case has left a community full of questions. Questions about motive. Questions about planning. Questions about who made that call before Cookie stepped out of that car with a knife already in her grip. Those questions don't have official answers yet, but they deserve them. A phone call that went unanswered. A confrontation that ended in broad daylight. A mother who, by every account, spent her life taking care of others, gone in a matter of hours. And 3 young women, one of which is also a mother to a 4-year-old toddler, now facing the rest of their lives shaped by what happened on that street, and by the seconds of video that followed. Caroline Peña leaves behind 5 children, a twin sister, and a community that genuinely loved her. Whatever the courts ultimately determine about what happened that afternoon, that loss is the part of this story that doesn't change. True Crime Hub will continue following this case as new details emerge, including any update on motive, additional charges, or court proceedings. If you want to stay with this story until there are real answers, subscribe and turn on notifications. We follow every case until the full picture emerges.